There we go. Good evening. This is the Harwich Finance Committee meeting, March 14th, 2023. We're at the Channel 18 studios here at the Community Center. As required by the open meeting law, you are hereby informed the town there will be video and audio recording as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who intends to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. And I now call the meeting to order. So I'll just notice for the record that we have participating remotely Michelle Gallucci. Hello, Michelle. Dana DaCosta.
Hello.
Hello, Dana. And Karen.
Hello.
Karen Doucette. Okay, very good. And this evening, the focus of our meeting, at least initially, is to review or get a presentation on the Monomoy Regional School District budget and have a discussion and possible vote on that as we go forward. So with us tonight, we have Scott Carpenter, the superintendent of schools. And Scott, do you want to introduce your team who's here?
Sure. With me is our business manager, Michael McMillan, and we also have present with us tonight, Terry Russell is in the audience. Terry is one of our school committee members from Harwich.
Okay, so we'll look forward to start your presentation. Is Michael going to do it?
Michael will do part of it. I'll jump in on part.
Okay. Fabulous.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to actually share my presentation on the screen.
Okay.
So
These handouts for people?
Yes.
They can mark them up or do whatever they want to do. Or there you go. Let's just pass those around. And a couple extra pieces.
There we go. Excellent. So, Terry, do you want a copy?
Thanks, Michael. He's probably seen that 100
You probably have it committed to memory by now.
Almost.
All right, so there's a lot of information over the next 26 slides. If at any point you need us to go into more detail,
Sure.
or just move things along, feel free to give us a nod. But just so you're aware of the process, so as we develop the budget, it's really about identifying the district's needs, how those needs will drive expenditure, and then what revenue is available to help fund that expenditure. And again, at the end of that, out comes the assessments, which is the bit you're really interested in. So from the really high level takeaway, if you remember nothing else about my presentation or our presentation this evening, student needs, we're finding coming out of COVID, we've seen an increase in student needs, less about health. When we were initially dealing with COVID, it was all about the immediate health response to COVID. But now we're seeing the long-term academic and social emotional needs of students as a result of missing school and being remote for so long. We're also seeing an increase in special education needs, particularly at the lower grades for students when they missed out on some services early on in their academic careers. At the same time, as I'm sure you guys have spoken about a lot on this committee and elsewhere, we're seeing a lot of financial pressures, some that common to the rest of the country, like inflation, supply chain challenges, and so on, and then also some that are particularly difficult on the Cape, particularly around labour is a challenge for us, both people we're hiring, but also in contractors such as HVAC. They're having difficulty hiring, and they're passing on those costs to us. So those two high-level issues, the budget that presented now that's been approved by school committee is $44,382,003. That is an increase of 3.69%, or just shy of $1.6 million.
So if we cut that $3, you won't be too upset.
We'll be fine. Yeah, a nice round number. I know. Yeah. And then that comes out at an assessment increase for Harwich of 4.3% since FY23, or $1.168 million. And on the Chatham side, it would be just over 2%, or $196,000.
Is that strictly based on the ratio of the population?
So it's based on, since So it used to be basically, and I'll go into a wee bit more detail on this, but when we get to the assessment, it's broken up into transportation, capital, debt, and operating expenses. And they used to just be a straight split up based on percentage of enrollment. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but roughly that was the case. When we changed the regional agreement, now before that happens with the operating costs, both towns pay for their own elementary school. So the elementary schools are assessed each town first, and then everything beyond that is assessed based on enrollment in the upper grades. So that's a really shortened version.
Yeah.
It's way more it's ridiculously complicated.
That's probably the most common question we get asked.
So basically, towns pay for their own elementary schools, and everything else is based on enrollment.
Yeah. Okay.
So, one of the things I think it's helpful to stress here, and also we talk about in the school committee and the management team a lot, is that we try to develop a budget which is a balance of meeting delivering a high quality educational program while also being, providing good stewardship of the taxpayer dollars. And we recognize that, that's a balance that you're also keen to achieve, and that you might have different feelings about what that balance is. But we do know right now we're seeing an increase in needs to improve our education or to deliver on our educational program due to how our students are doing. So the next couple of slides just going to provide a little context before we get too deep into the numbers. But as we're trying to meet the needs of our students and those financial pressure, we're focusing on three key aims. It's high quality instructional materials with excellent classroom instruction, support for social and emotional learning and mental health, and through everything we're doing, a commitment to equity. So that's like a golden thread. And just what that means in practice, that means we're spending more money on textbooks and curriculum materials. We are a lot of focus on professional development and aligning our work throughout the district, so making sure that our elementary schools, our middle school, and our high school are all singing the same tune. And that's the work around the portrait of the graduate. We're seeing a lot more after-school enrichment, and that because that really helps develop students' relationship with the school, gets them in the building, and more comfortable teachers and friends, and that all helps their academics. We are seeing expanded preschool, so when that comes back to that demand for more special education services, so we're seeing our preschool programs are bigger than we expected this year and next. More social emotional support, adjusting our staffing structure, and investing in our buildings. So all of that stuff. Yes.
Is the preschool, is that an integrated program?
Yes.
That is for the kids with disabilities?
Yes.
Also?
Exactly. So students with individual educational programs, disabilities, they get placed. They have a right to a place in a preschool program, and then we bring in sort of the community friend student or peer student who doesn't have an IEP, and they have to. Well, this year they have to pay. Next year, the school committee is going away with that fee. But it's not just open for everybody. It's driven by the number of students who have IEPs.
So you don't directly compete with the mom and pop, daycare kind of preschool thing.
I think many of them run programs that are sort of full day programs.
Yeah.
So for instance, I frequently brought this up. I've been a school administrator since before my kids were born, and as a school administrator, there was always an integrated preschool in my school system, but it didn't work on when both myself and my wife at the time didn't. We worked full time. We couldn't just leave in the middle of the day to use the integrated preschool. So so we had to kind of use the mom and pop one. So it doesn't compete with those, but it does provide a really valuable service. And one of the I think the good things that happens in this budget that Michael brought up is that we have been charging families for the peer models ever since the district came together, and before that, we're not charging parents who will be, we won't charge the peer model children next year, but fingers crossed it will come out and hopefully be a financial wash, because and it's one of these cases where because we charge, we can't count them in our enrollment counts for state reimbursement. And ideally, if the numbers work out right, the state will be reimbursing us, and it should be about what the parents had been previously paying. So it's going to be a win for families, and hopefully it'll also help more families who have balked at having their child be a peer model to take advantage of the free preschool that the school district's offering, because they wouldn't have to pay.
Okay, and just while we're on this topic, the selectmen do have an article in the warrant. I think it's 250,000 associated with, I guess I'll just call it, it sounds like preschool and some other things to me. That's not part of your team.
Right. And
I guess
it's
totally.
it's not, I would be happy to send to you, Peter, and for you to share with the board, and I could do the same for the selectmen. I wrote a piece last year supporting the similar program that Chatham rolled out a year ago.
Yep, right.
Because there's a lot of research on the educational merits of helping families get their children into a preschool program.
Right.
And one of the things in terms of just educational growth and everything else that happens, and just having them be ready for kindergarten as young children.
Yep.
One of the challenges that COVID brought on our society that's behind one of the things that Michael mentioned. We have more children with identified special needs. We're dealing with, I think, a COVID bubble on this right now, where because of COVID, children weren't in preschools for a period of time, and children weren't identified by preschool teachers as potentially needing some speech work or this or that. So we're in this process where we're doing some catch up for some early intervention, which ideally should have happened during COVID. So we're hoping that the increase in preschool need will drop off a bit for the early intervention over the next year. So we'll have to see how that plays out, but that's also
Okay, now if you can send that to me and I can share with the team.
Happy to.
It's just so everybody knows, it's called child care. We just got this child care early intervention support program, and it is estimated $250,000. So we're looking forward to learning more about it. So,
Are any of the children with disabilities, both preschool and school age, placed with a private school for kids with disabilities?
Yep. Yes, we have a number of children and students from all grades, not from all grades, but throughout the district.
That can be very expensive.
That can be very expensive.
but you're obligated. You're obligated to do it.
Pardon?
You're obligated to do it. Right?
Oh, yeah, because the CFC will determine
Yeah.
where the child gets placed, and if they say
Yeah.
private school, that's it.
Yeah.
It's a great question, Dan, and I'll also share this. Having come up as an administrator off Cape, where there were private placements north, south, and east and west from you, I think it was easy to find placements here. Just geography, there's not placements north and south of us.
Right.
Yeah. So it has created something that I think it's good for everybody, but it forces us as a school district to create programs, and the best programs we can in-house, so that we're serving a wider variety of children at Monomoy in-house than what would have happened, off Cape. And the reality is, all of those children are part of our community. And, and I think that was, for me, even when I first came and visited 10 years ago, it was one of these really noticeable things that, hey, it's like there are children who who off-K may have been placed out, that this district has found a way, and we've actually found a way, we've decreased that number of children that are placed out by creating more intensive needs special education programs within the district. And we've got some fantastic special educators that are supporting that, but still, sometimes there's a child who does need to get placed out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so,
Who's that?
Sorry. Peter, I think you asked this question, but you were a little muffled. So I want to ask, is this the same thing that's on the warrant for 250 grand, or is this separate?
Yeah, I would say this, what you see in the warrant, Scott's gonna send me some information I'll share with you, but from what I heard, it is not part of the school program, but it integrates with the school to an extent that you're preparing kids to get into the school in the proper manner, let's put it that way.
I think where there's the potential that there could be a blend of the two, again, it depends on a provider, but if there's a provider that offered a half-day program, so that the child was getting services half of the day with us,
Right.
and half of the day with a YMCA program or
Right.
or a mom and pop daycare, you could see that money funding that half day that's happening outside of the school.
Right, so that, Karen, just to be clear, that $250,000, assuming it passes, will not be spent within the school system.
Got it.
Correct.
And what are you guys estimating for your program? Just curious.
Well, no, we're gonna get through the budget, so don't worry, we're gonna,
Okay, all right.
yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
all right, thank you very much. So lots of challenges, but lots of really excellent stuff happening in the schools to support students. So this is, it's a really difficult to see on the screen, hopefully it's a little clearer in your packs, but just putting this FY24 increase in its historical context, 3.7%, clearly that's higher than it's been for the last few years, but still below inflation, and given all the macroeconomic pressures on the district right at the moment, we think it's a good budget to help meet the needs of the students. So this slide's it's not perfect, this chart, but I like just to give you a sense of the kind of major factors that are driving the increase in the budget. So the lines in red that kind of go out to the left, those are factors which have reduced the budget as we went into FY23, and so they're really helping fund many of the other items in the budget. And so the two major red lines there are school choice out. So that is students that choose to attend other public schools who live in Harwich and Chatham that choose to attend other public schools other than Monomoy. So the number of students doing that has gone down significantly over the last 2 to 3 years. And so that's delivered a savings to the budget of, almost $300,000.
And how much do they take with them if they go out?
So it's about $5,000, give or take, per student. It's different in some situations, but they are thereabouts. So there's been a big reduction over the last few years. And, we took a couple of years because, when you see the first year, you just want to wait and see and make sure it is a trend and not a one-off. So we took a couple of years before we banked those savings. Staff, we saw a lot of turnover in the last couple of years as well, and that's delivered savings because often those people who are leaving or retiring are near the top of the pay scale, and they're being replaced by people who are kind of near the middle or in the bottom half, and so we capture savings from that. So both of those help to offset the other costs. The biggest, and then the blue lines are the increases, and the biggest by far is our salary increases, it's like over $800,000. That's contractual salary increases, so that doesn't include any position increases, additional positions, and that's if we have a cost of living increase in the contract, or staff who are moving up in the on a salary line.
You have, how many contracts you negotiate? 5 or 5?
Yeah, 4, is it? I think 4.
Well, we have a contract with the MREA, Monolith Regional Educators Association, and that, so that has sort of subunits. So there's the Unit A, which are the teachers, guidance counselors and such. Unit B, which are your teaching assistants and your clericals and other support staff. And then Unit C are the cafeteria workers. So you've got that contract, and there's a separate contract with custodians. It's an SEIU contract.
So they all, I'll just call it settled now for the coming year, or
So they're all settled for the coming year. Next year will be in negotiations with the MREA.
Okay. And is that typically a 3-year agreement?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
So in addition, there's some additional budget items, which we're going to talk about a little bit more about that. We're seeing a big increase in transportation and utilities. You know, transportation is due to staffing increases and fuel increases. Utilities, we're seeing gas and electric prices going up. We have had to add some special education program staffing pursuant to students' individual educational plans. Mostly that's, you know, one-to-one assistance. Our out-of-district costs have gone up, just that students who are educated outside of the district have seen. The private schools in particular have seen a big increase in their rates. It's approved by the state. There's like a 14% increase in some of the rates, the tuition rates that we pay for students educated outside of the district. And then maintenance, just that's another one. So HVAC maintenance, we've seen a huge increase in our HVAC maintenance in the last couple of years. We're trying, you know, I think there's partly related to COVID. There's much greater, keener sense we've got to keep everything working all the time. Just the age of the buildings and the cost of getting contractors out has gone up. So those are that's the budget increases in a nutshell.
How many total employees in the district?
Like 350, give or take, it kind of fluctuates. Actually, there you go. So that did was 355, it was in October 1st. So this is just all of our staffing, so you can see that it has come down slightly since 2019, but went up after 2022. And that's principally driven by those ESSER funds, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure. So we have state funds from the federal government to support us in responding to COVID, and we've used those funds to hire new positions, and that's part of the reason for that increase.
So, you know, so ever since I came here 10 years ago, one of the first things I did in my very first budget cycle was discuss with the school committee and talk about, you know, sort of establishing, you know, class-sized guidelines that we would staff budgets around. You know, so I think, Peter, this goes all the way back to your days on the select board, you know, where we talk about having class sizes at the elementary level across all grade levels are averaging, you know, around 18 plus or minus 1, and at middle school and high school 19 plus or minus 2. And I felt it was really important at the time, if I give you just sort of a brief history of the two towns. Chatham Elementary and even the middle school were far below that guideline. And Harwich Elementary, particularly at the lowest grade levels, were way above that guideline. And it was almost as if Harwich was having these huge class sizes at kindergarten and first grade to make sure that over time that there would be enough students left to have a viable senior class. But educationally, your smallest classes should be at those lower grade levels. So, you know, so I kind of did this to go and sort of establish where we want to be for supportive class sizes, to go help us equalize the two schools and divert school choice so that we're filling free seats and trying to achieve class sizes close to that. So, you know, so we'll oftentimes come back to this in staffing discussions as to where we're striving to be, where it's supportive at all grade levels. At the school committee, if you watched the tape, there was or if you were there, it was a robust discussion as to what positions that we've discussed adding to the budget would we want to add, or other enhancements to the program. So on this slide is a list of the things or program enhancements that will have some of the key things that are included in this list, there are some curriculum support positions that I'll talk about in a little more detail later, that are district-wide positions that'll be focused more at the secondary level, to free up our curriculum director to focus more at the elementary level. There's increased special education supports at Harwich Elementary as well as Chatham Elementary, and there's also increased supports for interventionists, both at Chatham Elementary and at Harwich Elementary. And again, I think some of the challenges that that Michael discussed is we're coming out of COVID. There are students who were behind in that learning from when things were remote or partially remote, and there are some gaps that we're having to continue to close. Inevitably, on a list, there's something that isn't funded, and I'm sure Mark has gotten an email from Charles on things that weren't on the superintendent's recommended budget that weren't funded, and in past years, in the past several budget cycles, the curriculum positions were in that unfunded unfunded list, and we strive to kind of prioritize things each year and pick off, okay, what things can we fund, while also just trying to keep in mind the those class size guidelines, knowing that that we have some buildings that are starting to contract in terms of the number of students, because over the last decade there just have been fewer school-age children in both Harwich and in Chatham, partly because of housing challenges that families are facing. But it's a Cape-wide phenomena that's been going on for a couple decades now. So the other thing that we're very cognizant of is that I think we've been blessed as a school district that there are ESSER funds. These are emergency relief funds that the federal government came up with to support schools during COVID. And we have used ESSER funds to help bolster the HVAC system, to ride out the pandemic. There are things we've done on the facility front, but you could also use the ESSER funds to fund some staff positions. So we currently have 6 staff positions that are funded by ESSER that I would say that we're looking at as more longer term positions, because the ESSER funds they end at the end of this coming school year.
So it's like a grant you have, and you put in bodies because of the grant, but then the grant runs out.
Right. So
we see that in other places too. And then we still have the need.
Right.
That's
So
what you're saying.
right. So so for instance, it would be naive of me to think that just because the ESSER money is going away in a year, that the social emotional challenges that some children are facing or continue to face because of what happened with COVID is going to disappear. So you'll see in there, you'll see a mental health coordinator, you'll see interventionists. Like, we see those needs moving forward. There's also a need. I mentioned the COVID bump in our early intervention at the elementary level. So we're funding a position that at least our gut is after we kind of do the catch up on early intervention, that this preschool position may not be needed in the out years. It may be. We'll have to see how the numbers play out after this year. And then one of the things that we've moved off of the ESSER grant that we had been carrying is we had been carrying an extra nurse during the pandemic. I think we're far enough beyond the pandemic side of, at least on nursing, that we're banking it now more on the other, the social emotional learning components. But I also want to stress that you have a grant that goes away, you need to have a plan looking forward. And I've stressed to the school committee and with others that, that just because we're talking about the FY24 budget, we're also having conversations behind the scenes on FY26 and beyond.
Right. I get it.
So in the next slide, this looks at what is the staffing that we anticipate next year at our buildings and our staffing levels within those class size guidelines. But we also know, looking out a year from now, that our numbers at the middle school are going to drop off pretty substantially in the next, between now and developing the FY25 budget. We've got some class sizes at Harwich Elementary School that are going to fall below that guideline, that we could reduce 6 positions on paper and still be within those guidelines in FY25 and be able to absorb those things that we value. So again, this is us talking FY25 at an FY24 conversation, but I don't want the towns to think, oh, we've got $500,000 in salary and that we're not thinking about a year from now when the grant goes away.
I understand.
Yeah, one of the things I just want to kind of share with you is just some data. Some data that's challenging and some data that's very promising too. We've mentioned that there are two curriculum, district-wide curriculum people that we're carrying in this iteration of the budget. And one of the reasons that we've talked about is if we look at our grade 3 through 8 performance, we've got solid scores relative to the Cape. But I also think, we look at this and say, okay, can we do better? And we can do better. If we just look at FY20, if we look at FY22, and this is post-pandemic, and it dropped off rather precipitously from before the pandemic. So the blue bar is ELA. So grades 3 through 8, there are half of the children that aren't at where they should be. They're not at a meeting. It's called the standard they have is meeting or exceeding expectations, which is you're at the grade level that they hope you'd be at. I think might be a layman's way of looking at it. And the same goes with math. And we're looking at these positions would help us provide the supports to help coach and guide teachers to differentiate and support students where they're at and accelerate that growth. On the next slide, the same thing happens. You can look at happens at the high school level, where we have the percentage that are meeting or exceeding is better, but still, with ELA, you want to see the number, above 70% at grade 10. We want to see those numbers up into the 80s, 90s, and ideally, in an ideal world, it's at 100%. That you want to get to that. That you want to get to that place. So again, it's trying to bolster the supports is why we're looking at that. So an example of how taking support and support, coaching, and differentiation can get there. A year, or I guess we're now, a year ago when 2 years ago in conversations, but last year we implemented a new reading program. It was a big budget item in our budget presentations. Now, 2 years back to implement last year. So it's a new reading program at the elementary level by a company called the American Reading Company. And we have also been putting a lot of coaching and support for the teachers behind the scenes to help children as they're coming out of COVID improve their reading. And if we look at some of the fantastic work that's happening at the elementary schools in just the last 2 years, we started coming out of the pandemic with only a third of the children reading at grade level, if you want to think of that, proficient or above, and a third of the children really behind at Harwich Elementary School. And if we look at this point of time, a year and a half later, we're at 70% of the kids are now reading at or above that grade level. They're proficient or above, and we've dropped that by almost a third the number of kids that are at that lowest level. And I'm sort of optimistically looking at this. If this sort of trend continues, out one more year, we're going to be at that, at this, number of kids that are reading at grade level that, where you want to see the numbers heading. And it's been nice. We've had other districts from the Cape wanting to come and see what's happening at our elementary schools, because they're seeing, they're hearing about, the turnaround that they're seeing. So, so there's a lot of evidence that, that putting in the supports to go help teachers, coach teachers, and provide the supports for differentiation, it can pay off. And that's what's behind when we have these discussions on the curriculum roles. So just in terms of staffing and where our staffing sits relative to others, we sit kind of right in the middle of our peers when it comes to student to teacher ratios. The Cape schools are also a little better off than the rest of the state, so we're in about that top third when it comes to student teacher ratios for the state, which is that little histogram on the bottom. Mm-hmm. If we look at administrator to student ratios, we have always been the lean machine at Monomoy and have the lowest administrator to student ratios. So currently we're running just shy of 200 students to one administrator that would be working with teachers. Think of this as a principal, assistant principal, or somebody in a curriculum capacity, versus a district like Falmouth, which is on the other end of the spectrum, where they have proportionally double the administration with one administrator for just about every 100 students. The request here to add 2 district level positions takes us from being the lean machine on the Cape to a little closer to the rest of the Cape, but we'd still be the leanest group on the Cape.
Where do those 2 administrators reside?
So what we've talked about is that their roles would be secondary. So we'd be looking at one that could focus on ELA and the humanities side of secondary, and one who could focus on math and STEM. And if you think about some of the challenges, I've got a math science background and feel really comfortable walking in and supporting teachers in biology and physics. Sure. I've had colleagues that were administrators whose backgrounds were French teachers, and going in to support a physics teacher or a calculus teacher. Not there are some things that you can talk about what's good teaching, but actually supporting some of that curriculum piece is where we're looking at. On the secondary level, it's trying to build some some expertise on the coaching side there.
Okay. All right, just a change of tack for a second. I'm going to talk a little bit about our capital and extraordinary maintenance items. So we have an extensive capital planning process that takes place really over the summer. The capital plans presented to school committee, and these are the items that we've included for next year's budget. The ones I guess I'd like to highlight, one of the priorities is updating our PA systems, so that's public announcement systems, actually in all 4 schools, but particularly the 2 elementary schools and the middle school, just to make sure that any announcements made by administration can be heard clearly in all parts of the school, which is not the case at the moment, and clearly that's a safety and security issue, and that's a priority for getting that done as soon as we can once we start the new budget year. We're also looking at external lighting at the middle school. That's also a safety issue. So when it's particularly in the fall, now and in the fall, when we're having a lot of students being picked up in the evening, there's not a lot of light out there, so it's quite dark, and that's a risk. We're also looking at we have a facilities truck right now for the middle school in Chatham, but it's not roadworthy, and so it needs to be replaced. And we also continue to transfer funds to stabilization fund for capital and maintenance needs. So we, with the town's approval, set up a stabilization fund a few years ago, and every year we contribute to that to help offset any emergency building needs that come up.
What's sort of the current balance of that stabilization?
That is $187,000.
Oh, there it is, right there, okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
So this will bring it up unless you spend something to
Yeah.
like 237, something like that. Okay. And is there a number that's recommended, like what you should have?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think unlike excess and deficiency where, where there's a 5% cap, I don't think there's a number that's necessarily recommended. I think in the next slide here,
Yeah.
Michael will bring up just the reality of how old,
buildings are getting older,
if you walk into our buildings, they look good. And in a lot of credit to our custodial team on making buildings, making the two elementary schools and the middle school that are over 50 years old not look that way. But behind the facade are boilers that are aging, and if something goes in the middle of the year, you've got to be able to have an account to go to go to. We also just thinking longer term. At some point, the turf on the field's going to need to get replaced, and again, if we can build the account to go and buffer whatever the costs are of boilers or this or that, that's the account that we can help go to smooth out the fiscal impact.
Okay.
Oh, I missed that last part. My question was going to be, to what extent do you rely on fund balance for these emergency situations?
The excess and deficiency fund balance? Or
Or stabilization fund. They were talking about adding, the discussion was the stabilization fund.
Well, I'm visualizing the balance sheet fund balance.
So yes, I think that's our excess and deficiency. So the end of the year, the Department of Revenue comes in and certifies how much money we have left, a bit like free cash for a town.
That's the unexpended fund balance.
Yeah. So right now, so the way that's being used at the moment, it's not like assigned to specific projects, but it's used just to offset the overall assessment before it's assigned to each town. So we have $800,000 coming out of that, going into FY24 to reduce the assessments each time. So, I mean, I think you raise a good point about should we be using that, for earmark almost for particular projects, but up until now, it's just been used to reduce the overall assessment.
I understand.
Does the state restrict the amount of monies that you can carry in fund balance?
Yeah, it can only be 5% of your budget. So right now, 5% of our budget, we are over that right now, and it would require us to use up $500,000. So as a minimum, we had to offset assessments by $500,000 to get it below the maximum. But we're doing 800,000. We're ahead of the game.
Okay.
And then this is the slide the superintendent was talking about. So each of our buildings, so this basically lists all of kind of major building components, their expected useful life, and how old they are at each of the buildings. So you'll see at Chatham and the middle school in particular, they're up, they're over their useful life. I mean, they're still working well, and we don't need to replace them now, but we're just aware that is on the horizon. The Harwich Elementary School, there was a refurbishment of that building about 20 years ago. A lot of these items were replaced, but they are now these are all going to need to be replaced soon as well. And even at the high school, many people ask me how old it is because they can't believe it's 10 years old already. It feels so good. But even at 10 years old, some of those machinery, particularly the HVAC systems, they run 24/7. So they've been running for 24/7 for 10 years. And just they're not to be replaced, but the cost of repair and maintenance is going up.
And some of the things on this list, you can, as a school district, apply to the MSB to help offset and defray the costs of it, just like when we built the new high school. But because of cost overruns that have happened in the major core building projects, so when they have not funded for this year and next year the accelerated repairs. So, yeah, so
Like a roof.
so
Yeah.
Michael and I have been
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about the roof at the middle school, and which would be something that Harwich and Chatham would share costs on.
Sure.
And we've been talking with Chatham about a roof on Chatham Elementary School that the town of Chatham would pay for, as things that we ideally, we started we did the application process to do the accelerated repair. And we're given notice that, that sorry, because of, these overruns in the main, building projects, it's not, you'll have to wait. So we'll keep going back, but those needs, they're looming out there. And again, that's a place where stabilization is, becomes one of those areas that you can tap into to help offset and defray the costs or lower an assessment down the road.
Good.
All right, so that's kind of the end of the presentation about expenditure, so or what's driving our costs. The next few slides, we're going to talk about the revenue that's available to offset some of those costs, and then we'll talk about the assessments. So just the way the regional agreement is written, some revenue comes off before we finalise the budget, and then other general fund revenue helps to reduce assessments. So when you see that budget figure of a 44.3 million, that is net of this revenue here in blue. So that includes school choice. So that's money we receive for students who are coming here but don't live in Chatham and Harwich. And so while the number that we pay out has come down a lot, the number we receive has actually not gone down so much. So we're still receiving quite a lot of money. We're still raising a lot of students, and with them money, which is
So approximately how many students come in?
I might say like 220, but let me double check that. Let me confirm that once we finish. I can look up the slide. I think that much, but I might be totally wrong. Yeah. So 1.4 million dollars in school choice. Circuit breaker is to offset some of the high costs where we have, particularly we have out of district students receiving special education services out of the district. The state reimburses us for some of those costs, and we're up a little on that this year. Grants, we have about $600,000. That's pretty steady in terms of grants from last year, but except ESSER. So that $678,000 is in the budget for next year for those positions that the superintendent was highlighting. So that bar will not be there next year,
right. And
that's where we hit the plan. But overall, this is up about $500,000. And then, so this is the green, this is the general fund revenue. So after the budget is set, after that 44.38 million, then before we calculate assessments, we take this off before we calculate assessments. So that is chapter 70, that's the primary method by which the state provides funding toward education. That's up a little from last year, but not as much as we hoped. The excess and deficiency, so that's $800,000 that we said we would budget. Transportation's up a little. Charter school aid, that's kind of confusing funding that the state provides to help offset the cost of us sending students to charter schools. So we send students to charter schools and we get charged a fee for that, like school choice, but then the state reimburses a part of that to help pay to lessen the blow.
So just so we're clear, if you send a student to Sturgis,
yep,
east to west or wherever it is, right? And you send $5,000 with them?
That's more.
That's the whole per pupil.
So it's like $20,000.
So the state in year one gives you back some money, and they like in the out years it's a little bit less and a little bit less until
Some of that 5,000 you get back, is that what you're
some
saying?
20,000.
If someone goes to Sturgis, we send 20,000? Okay, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. So if somebody were to go to Nauset, we say
Right.
5. So it's choice to another district, it's 5,000. Choice to a charter, either Lighthouse or Nauset, it's the whole per pupil.
Okay, and is the number that's 22,000, is that a given number, or is that just what they charge to go to Sturgis, or how does that number come up?
It's literally off when DESI calculates the per pupil expenditure. So you can imagine if somebody from here goes to Sturgis, it's 20,000. But if you're up the road in Provincetown where the per pupil expenditure is a lot more, the amount of money that's following that student is a lot more just because of what the per pupil costs are.
So, just in my naive head, we should have given the parents $10,000 to keep their kids in the school district.
It's an incentive, but not all of them. That'd be the problem.
No, I understand that. I'm just, okay, sorry.
So I was just checking that. So we're at 200 and, I think for FY23 it was estimated 240 actually school choice coming in.
And where do they mostly come from? Do you have a breakdown like that?
I do.
We do by town, but most of them come from Dennis and Yarmouth. There's then you can imagine Brewster being next, but we have kids that come all the way from Sandwich, and a lot of times it may be a parent works in Harwich, in Harwich or Chatham, and come with their child. And it starts, oftentimes starts at the elementary level. So the way it works is once they come in with school, through school choice, they're entitled to stay through senior year. And we have very consciously adopted an approach where we look at the class sizes and say, okay, if there's 16 children in the classroom and we have that class size guideline at 18, there's 2 seats that would be available, and we would make them available because as my predecessor, Dr. Cragen once said, you have a choice, Scott. We can either bring in some revenue for those 2 empty seats, or they'll just gather desks. So that approach makes sure that we're not taking in so many students that we're adding a whole classroom. Because if you have a model where you're having to add entire classrooms, an entire classroom of students at $5,000 a piece isn't going to pay for the salary and benefits and teaching. That's not a fiscally stable model.
And so what is it, once a year by some day you gotta declare how many seats and what grade you have open?
All you have to actually do is declare that you're going to be part of the school choice program, and the state publishes that. Okay. And then we have the time to sort of thoughtfully look at how many, it's really, I think, super important at kindergarten. You thoughtfully look at how many kindergarten children are signing up, and what's the space there, because if you oversubscribe, you're now oversubscribed for the next 12 years.
So it still works that when someone comes in, you have to at least offer them to stay in.
Right.
You can't just say, okay, we took you this year.
Right.
You can't come back.
For those students who are out of district, who's responsible for providing transportation?
So that's part of the cost behind the special education out of district, that you provide the transportation to that program.
But I think you're talking like Sturgis, maybe? Is that what you're talking?
Well, like Sandwich, you said you have.
Sorry. So if we're talking a school choice child.
Right, yes, I'm sorry.
Parents are responsible for the transportation for school choice children
Not
that come to the
district?
No.
Oh, that's interesting. Interesting.
And then just the last thing I wanted to highlight on this slide is that other district revenue to the far right, $214,000. So that includes interest and kind of investment revenue. So with treasury bonds being being so high, we've been able to invest some of our funds to help increase revenue. And so that's higher than it has been in the past.
You do that while watching your cash flow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that's the
But if
treasury.
you have money that's sitting idle,
Yes,
you
exactly.
need it
So
for
we
6
like-
months or something,
yes.
you kind of ladder things in.
Yes,
Got it.
that's exactly what we do. So we have a treasurer, a new treasurer. We had a great old treasurer, and we now have a new treasurer who's great as well, and he's been able to help to offset the assessments.
Hopefully he or she will teach the students about it.
And while we do have, I know, so our a principal at the high school was saying how important it is to have business teachers.
Yeah,
Behind this budget is adding a,
personal finance.
yeah, we'll sort of shift some staffing around, but we'll be bringing business and finance back to the high school.
Okay.
All right. So, sorry.
I was just gonna ask, because this transportation thing has me bewildered. Does Massachusetts Constitution require a free and appropriate education?
Yes.
Yeah, so just.
Sounds like a loaded
so
question.
if-
Sounds like a
To
loaded
kind
question.
of give you a quick education on the transportation, school districts, regional school districts are required, or not required, but regional school districts can be reimbursed for transportation.
Yeah.
And you're not required, you're not required to provide it for everyone, so it's, so you can, it's if it's X amount of, distance away from the school. The reality, but the reality of our neighborhoods, it's like, we don't have sidewalks all over, so,
Right.
so we provide the transportation for, for every child. We're not saying, oh, you live within a mile, we expect you to walk. If you go to a single town district, like let's say Sandwich doesn't get a transportation reimbursement, and there are some towns, even one of where my children went to elementary school, that off Cape, that there's a fee that the school district can charge to use the buses. We don't charge that fee because if we charge the fee, the funds that we get for transportation aid, this what is it, $825,000 would evaporate. So it does make sense to charge the fee when the state's providing that. That's actually, this regional transportation aid is the only perk that regional school districts get, but it's a sizable one.
The thing that strikes me is that if I'm a parent in Sandwich and I want my child to come to Monomoy, I have to provide the transportation.
Yeah.
And that seems to run contrary to the requirements of the Constitution, where the state is responsible to provide a free and appropriate education, and that includes transporting the student.
Well, I think
I think the definition for free and appropriate would be your local school district.
so you
So-
have it at Sandwich.
Right.
It's just
So if you go to your local school district, you're provided that opportunity. If you elect by choice to go somewhere else, then I think the burden's on you. I mean, that's the
Right.
way
Yeah, that's the way it's looked at.
Yeah.
All right, so we calculated the budget, which is 44.3 and a bit million. Then off of the top of that comes 6.2 million in the general fund revenue and state aid. And then what's left, that 38.18 million, has to be split between the two towns. So one of the key factors in that is foundation enrollment. So that's the number of students who live in each town and attend school anywhere, whether it's Monomoy or another public school, or another public school. And so those percentages are a big factor in determining the assessment to each town. So this I've got this kind of, I really like this slide because it captures what's going on with enrollment and why money keeps shifting a little bit towards Harwich. But the top table shows the enrollment for that year. So you've got the enrollment year, then the Harwich number and the Harwich percentage, the Chatham number, the Chatham percentage, and then to what percentage has shifted from Chatham to Harwich. So you can see this year, like 0.26% shifted, so it's pretty small. And the year before, actually, there was a big shift the other way, over a percentage from Chatham to Harwich. But prior to that, there was 1.6 from Chatham to Harwich, and a couple of years before that, another 1.6. And those cumulative impact of those is shown in the table below, because we use a 3-year average for a lot of these calculations. even though there's been some shift towards Chatham at some point, it's still not been enough to shift the 3-year average towards Chatham, and that's still going up by almost, a quarter or slightly over a quarter for the last couple
So
of
do
years.
we still allow Chatham Elementary, or Harwich Elementary students to go to Chatham if they have space?
We do, and vice versa. So, so again, we use those class size guidelines to, to sort of guide us on when, when we're saying no, that there's not space, but there are I think even less than a handful of Chatham children who go to Harwich Elementary School, and again, I think many of them are staff children.
Sure.
There are multiple handfuls of Harwich children who elect to go to Chatham Elementary School, and for some Harwich families, the choice was either they work in Chatham or they are living in East Harwich, which is geographically closer to Chatham Elementary School, and it just made sense. If you're a parent who was going to drive your child to school, there's the shortest drive.
And if you, excuse me for dragging this up, but if you take someone from Dennis and you put them in the high school, do they count as Chatham or Harwich? Or
They count as neither in the
Okay.
in the calculation. So the calculation in this table here are children that live in Chatham or Harwich who go to our district or who go to Lighthouse Charter School, Sturgis, or go to school choice somewhere else because we're financially responsible for all of them somewhere in this budget. There's
I get it.
those that go to Cape Tech aren't in that because Cape Tech has a separate assessment that they come to you.
Right.
Those who end up going to Cape Cod Academy, which is a private school, wouldn't be in that number.
Okay. Right.
Interestingly, just prompted by your question, I just looked up. So on October 1st, there were 11 Harwich students in Chatham and 10 Chatham students in Harwich. So it's almost a wash right now. I mean, it changes throughout the year, but that was at the start of the year.
Okay.
All right. And so this is the assessment kind of summed up in this table. So the top line is the local minimum contribution. I haven't really mentioned that yet, but that's the first step in the assessment process is that the state calculates the minimum contribution each town, and they do it for all towns, and the state has to pay towards their education in their towns. So that number is almost 15 million for Harwich, for almost 4.6 for Chatham. So the first thing that happens in the assessment is that is assessed to each town. And so there was, as you can see, there was a big change in that from FY23. So it increased 1.3 million for Harwich and 300,000 almost for Chatham. So the reason it's so much is partly because of the Student Opportunity Act, the state increased the amount of funding for all students. But the economic performance of each town, particularly in the value of its property, and the income as measured by the state, has gone up so much that impacts how much is assessed, that local minimum contribution. So it's like a ridiculously complicated formula that the state has. It's all part of the Chapter 70 formula, but that went up by a lot. Now that doesn't mean that the town actually paid that much more because, the budget's not gone up, isn't influenced by how much that number goes up. It's just a bigger part of that budget is determined by the local minimum contribution. And that tends to be slightly bigger for Harwich than for Chatham.
I think one factor that also plays into this is when the town has a good fiscal year, the required minimum contribution goes up, and so I think the town had a good fiscal year, and which is probably one of the reasons why there's
You judge it by free cash?
Yeah,
It's a fabulous year.
So so I think the state, so the state's looking at sort of like what was the fiscal wherewithal
Sure.
that the state's seeing, and says, okay, good fiscal year, the number went up. So it's there's that in this, And part of that calculus is enrollment, you know, you know, what is the foundation enrollment in a particular year?
And then the operating assessment beyond that, so after the local minimum contribution is taken out, then what's left is split up. And they went down a little bit because the local minimum contribution had gone up so much. Transportation went up because transportation's been going up so much. And capital went down slightly for Harwich, for Chatham, but went up for Harwich because we had previously planned to do the Chatham roof as part of our capital plan, which would have been 100% paid for by Chatham. But that came out because MSB is not supporting those kind of projects right now. And instead it was replaced unfortunately just the way the capital plan shook out, it was replaced by items which were district-wide, and so they get split between the two towns. So essentially a cost that was 100% Chatham came out and was replaced by a cost that was 75% Harwich, 25% Chatham. So it is, you know, the year before it had gone the other way because we put in that large road for Chatham first, just the way it goes. And then debt is the debt on the high school. We have a schedule of payments over, you know, 30 years, and that is just, they go down each year as the number goes down. And that's how you get the total assessment for each town. You know, 4.3% increase for Harwich, 2% for Chatham. And then it does seem like a lot of money, but just a reminder that had we not made the change to the regional assessment that we did last year, it would be $700,000 more this year. So it's still a good news story. It's still positive, and we're like kind of lower than we might otherwise have been. And then the last thing, just, you know, reassure you as a Finance Committee, I'm sure you want us to have a long-term perspective on our budget, and Superintendent's mentioned a couple of times, you know, we're looking out at the ESSER funding. We also know there's some other items coming for next year. As you mentioned, we are all set this year for going into FY24 for employment contracts. But going into FY25 will be new contracts for all our staff except custodians. And we know that given everything that's going on with the cost of living, inflation, that there's going to be a lot of pressure on salary increases. Hopefully we'll be doing some construction projects down the line, and we know that we've got some changes in enrollment. So lots coming over the next few years.
A lot.
That's it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We know it's complicated, and we're very happy. You know, we trust our kids to you folks to educate them. You know, as I always say, you know, I'll digress for a second, but in my church, we run a school in Long County, Liberia. It has 210 students in it. It costs us $100 a semester to educate a kid. And guess what? Last semester, because of the economy over there, we started out with 210, and by the time we got done, we had 80, because the parents couldn't fund it. And we, quite frankly, we're funding 50 of the 80, and then we decided for this semester and now to grab another 100 and bring back in. So, but I mean, it's just so different, right?
Yeah.
But I always say, because we end up with, you know, 6'5" guys in third grade. I mean, it's crazy, but that's the way it is, because they're coming in and out of education when they can, you know? And education is that one thing you can't take away from anybody. Once they learn how to read and write and do arithmetic, it's there, you know? But if you don't have it, you know, you're way behind. All right, so I do have one question going back to the slide on the budget request for people.
Yep.
And I'm only making this up. The thing about the theater house manager.
I'll just share this.
So I can just quickly share what that is. We had a theater house manager pre-COVID who was great. What's that?
Page 11.
So we had one before COVID because COVID shut things down and there was no use of the theater. That person took another job, so we came out of COVID needing somebody to come in there. And we had advertised for a while, and somebody applied who is what I would call the unicorn that we were looking for, but never had. And if you've ever gone into the production booth in a theater, there's a light board and a sound board, And there aren't a lot of people who really know how to use a light board and a soundboard. And this gentleman came in, and suddenly we were able to go and do things in our theater that, had productions going off better than they had ever before, and actually has this position to generate additional rental income. So the hope is that this is going to be ultimately there'll be some savings there by increasing the rental or increasing rental opportunities for the theater, but not just there. His role, we also have in this budget is supporting an upgrade to the lighting and sound that's at the theater, the smaller theater at the middle school. And he would be responsible, for that. So the idea behind this is to provide enough money in addition to some stipends that happen with plays to make it a living wage, so that the unicorn stays with us. And I read a letter from one of our teachers who was working with the production that's currently going on over at the high school right now at the school committee meeting, where she was like, I always thought we had a beautiful theater, but we hadn't really realized the potential of it. We finally found somebody who can help us realize the potential of the space.
Okay, so the only reason I asked, quite frankly, other than just knowing what it's about, if things go the way the selectmen would like them at town meeting, we will end up refurbishing, I'll call it, or renovating the auditorium over at the old middle school.
Yep.
And they talk about lighting and blah, 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 blah. They're gonna need somebody just like this
Yeah.
too. So if this is a part-time position, maybe somehow those two can be brought together and it will make a living wage.
Yeah.
I'm
for
sure
somebody.
that would be something that this guy would be very amenable
Yeah.
to. It's,
I would, just plant the seed with him if
Yeah.
he's,
And it's a good opportunity to plug this show at the high school right now, so get your tickets. It's
There you
on
go.
9 to 5.
There you go.
It's the show, not the time. It's called 9 to 5.
I've seen the, on the, at the library,
Yeah,
which is great. I hadn't read about it in the newspaper.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
it's out there. I missed that. I'd love to go see it.
yeah, great
Who's the,
energy.
who's the faculty advisor
Rachel Barnes.
for the shows?
Rose Richard.
Rose.
Christmas.
She's
Rose,
great.
oh, thank you, yeah.
My kids had it.
Yeah. They have
I-
great energy.
Actually, I'll tell you what though, when I went to the music concert just before Christmas, you need a bigger theater.
That's
I mean-
fantastic. Yeah.
I'm standing in the
middle school one,
hallways.
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like-
That was a great show, though.
Yeah, no, it's good. A lot of fun. All right, questions?
You've improved your English scores with that reading program. Anything comparable to that in math? I'm sure you've looked.
So
Math
there,
is so important.
so I think the answer is we need to go at some point shift and start looking at bolstering math too. Shortly after the district came together, we kind of came up with a unified math program for Harwich Elementary and Chatham Elementary. I think lessons learned, we didn't put in the same level of coaching and support behind that, and so I think we need to go back and when the reading program is flying on its own, to go back and really start focusing on elementary math. We have in this past, in the current budget year, we had put in place a new math program, or new math curriculum at the high school. So we do focus on math too, but definitely want to go back and see that same sort of growth that we're seeing on the ELA, the English front, happening on the math front at the elementary levels, and ideally with these curriculum roles, see similar growth happening in ELA and math at middle school level and the high school level.
Okay, so let's just check out in TV land, as I call it. Dana, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay,
I can
Mich-
say that I'm probably going to end up supporting this budget, even though there's several things in there that scare the heck out of me. But I understand the part of coming out of COVID and having to just have that boost of support to get the results you're going to need. And I think I'm going to support that. The only thing that scares me really is it's not sustainable. So, to have those kind of things keep coming in, it just, parts of it scare me. So, good budget, well thought out, better presented than usual, I'll just say. And it will get my support.
okay. Michelle, do you have any questions? Where'd you go, Michelle?
I'm messing with the wrong. No, I like the detail, and I don't really have any questions other than the pre-K program. Was that something that was, did you have that in plan before COVID hit, or is that something that you feel has become apparent due to COVID, that there is this need and you want to start that on a permanent basis?
The school districts throughout the state and country have pre-K programs. So it predated Monomoy, and predated COVID. So we are legally responsible for providing supports to preschoolers who are identified with some sort of special education need as 3 and 4 year olds. And again, what we were sharing, where we've had to add additional preschool sections and staffing, is that because of COVID, there were children who were infants and toddlers not going to preschools or pediatricians so much, and weren't identified for what they refer to as early intervention that would happen prior to even being 3 and 4 year olds. So we've got a little bit of catch up that our preschool is trying to meet the needs of those children, and so ideally, if this plays out as we anticipate, we'll catch up with that bubble of early intervention need, and I think drop back down to the number of preschool sections that we historically had.
Okay. Anything else, Michelle?
No, thank you.
Okay, Karen?
Hi, guys, thank you. Very good presentation. I really appreciate it. My thinking, I'm not even sure it's a concern, but my thinking right now is about the number of new positions that are in the budget for FY24, but also the discussion around the ESSER, I think it's ESSER funds going away, which is another 5 or 6 positions that are being paid for by that. So can you just tell me again how that plays out next year? Like, do we have to come up with the 800 grand or whatever it was to pay for all the people that are being paid for by ESSER now? Or are you gonna discontinue those roles or refill them with the new positions?
Right, so
that kind of thing.
Yeah, so what we presented, there's I think it's slide 13, has looks at when we look at class sizes that we anticipate for next year and the class sizes that we anticipate out a year from now in FY25 when those funds are gone. We anticipate that we should be able to consolidate some sections, classroom sections, still keep us under those class size guidelines, and absorb 6 FTEs worth of salary. So we should not need to come here next year and say, oh, we have to absorb the ESSER positions, because we should be able to go and look within our own staffing, keeping within those class size guidelines, and absorb that level of staffing.
So do those positions then go away, like the actual people?
So in terms of, if you think of the people that would be in an ESSER role, so if we call it one of those roles is a mental health coordinator. We could imagine a mental health coordinator is staying, but if we have at Harwich Elementary School, currently there are 5 sections that, let's say they have 15 children in them. We could consolidate to 4 sections at roughly 18 children and still stay within the, guidelines, but free up staffing. So at the end of the day, you have to look to say, have the staffing follow the children. But each year you want to go into a budget cycle and do that needs assessment, like which positions do you need, and carry the positions that children need, but also have the positions following the children. So we have at the moment there is the bubble. The biggest cohort of children is currently in the 8th grade. So we need to make sure that we have some staffing that's following that 8th grade bubble when they go into 9th grade. That we've got more teachers available that can teach 9th grade classes. So you're constantly doing that, making sure that the staffing follows the children.
So Karen, they're gonna do the best they can, they're gonna do the best they can to manage it. There's no guarantee.
Yeah, my question's about the money. I understand the teachers following the students, but the money following the teachers is what I'm asking about.
So-
I don't know that I have the answer to my question, but I'm not sure I'm asking it properly, so I apologize for that. I don't see how you keep those ESSER people on without having an increased budget.
I think what they're talking about is absorbing 6 FTEs of wages, but they're not necessarily the same person that is currently an ESSER person. So overall, that the ESSER funding going away, they're currently working with a plan in which they would not have to try to have a budget support those additional funds, because some staffing positions would go away in one form or another.
Yes.
Yeah, which is, and I think it just depends on where we are at the time, and I appreciate that thinking. Thank you for clarifying. What I think Michelle might have said, or Dana, we can't sustain the 3-4+%
Right.
increases every year on the budget. So I was just trying to figure out how we keep from adding to that that particular area.
I
That's
think
all. Thank you, guys.
as enrollment goes down, we think we'll be able to reduce the number of classroom teachers.
Yeah.
And that will offset increases elsewhere.
And we knew that the ESSER funds, that we knew that there were going to be some social emotional needs coming out of COVID, and that the federal government came up with these funds. And I think every school district across the state and country is now going to be challenged with, how do you not have a fiscal cliff when the ESSER money's gone? And I wanted to kind of get ahead of this one, at least in our conversations, and start talking about FY25 and the elephant in the room, that we do, we're very cognizant of the 6 positions that are carried in ESSER, but we also see how we can go and avoid a fiscal cliff next year.
And Karen, and for everybody else, I'd just say this. I have 5 granddaughters in the school system. Coming out of COVID, 3 of them are into some kind of I'll call it counseling, mental health type thing of different levels and different stages of anxiety and whatnot. They just are. And I'll just tell you personally, I see the effects of this and I deal with it every day, as the school system does. So I think we definitely have to support that, or we're going to end up with a whole generation of kids that are going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, Peter, I agree. I work a little bit with the kids over there too, and I 100% agree with the justification. So I'm not questioning any of that, guys, and you've done a very good job sharing that. I was just thinking of the dollars, that's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, got it.
Well, and I know, I appreciate the fact that you are thinking about how to deal with that and not starting with the assumption that the town is going to continue to pay for that number of positions.
You know, let's hope the situation doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
I mean, who
I mean,
knows? Who knows?
there is we have the line in the presentation that we will review or, conduct a needs assessment for next year's budget before we put any of these decisions into action, but that's the theory at least.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, could you send me the presentation?
Yes, I
Yeah.
would be
Yeah,
delighted to.
and as I said, I will, I'd be glad to share with you
Share that
what
as well.
I had
I'll share
written
with the team.
about,
Okay.
about
Yeah, maybe
special ed,
nobody knows.
not special ed, about preschool, that, I had written the document to support, at least as a superintendent, why I would,
Sure. I
advocate for,
understand.
for a preschool voucher
Yeah.
program.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's P-H-U-G-H-E-S.
Sorry, it's
Peter?
P-U-G.
Hang on one
Oh,
second.
Hughes, H-U-S, okay,
Yeah. 41
yep.
at Comcast.net.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. I'm sorry, who's asking? Karen?
Yeah,
Dana?
can we also request an actual copy of the budget?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
the headline, that we generally get each year?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, sorry, I was looking at the warrant list from Monday night and wondering if the budget that was in that warrant is really the budget, so 28,470,423.
Very close.
Sorry, so yeah, it's like.
It's
I think
a
it
few
might be
$100s, I
slightly
think,
higher,
different.
Yeah. Sorry, say that number again?
28,470,423 is what's in.
Yeah, it's like $850
Yeah.
something dollars less, actually, the actual number we have now.
So what should it be?
$28,469,466.
So when you get the presentation on slide 26, new assessment
Yep.
method under Harwich, that's the number, right?
Yeah, I saw it there and I wanted to just double check, yep.
Yep,
Excellent,
no,
thanks.
that's a good point.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay,
No.
thank you.
No.
Terry, you slid
Thank
through
you,
another
guys.
one.
Thank you
No,
very much.
actually, I was gonna comment, obviously through my little role, I've heard the folks share the budget at least 3 times prior to tonight. And I'm not the smartest guy on the block, but even I picked up stuff just listening and having an internal, oh yes. So it is a challenge you guys have, fresh off of work, to come in, look at this chart in the slides and make it all make sense, so.
Well, you can tell they put a lot of work into it and they came prepared, so we
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And if you have any follow-up questions,
Yep.
you know where to find us. We're more than happy to
Yep.
provide any we can.
Okay, fabulous, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna take just a minute, let them get their stuff organized and whatnot, and then we'll move on. Thanks again.
Legs.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll take a walk.
We have a couple minutes, Peter?
We're gonna keep going.
Take care.
Thank you, yeah. You need to go do something for, huh?
Just need to take a quick break.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Thanks.
We'll give you a minute or so.
We won't take any votes. I wouldn't call that a house manager, I would call that the theater manager or the technical director. The house manager is like the person who manages the audience and the lobby
Oh, okay. Yeah,
in my
right,
head, not
right.
the sound and light.
AV guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, no, a theater has a technical director and they make sure all the wires are in the right places.
yeah.
Peter, did you actually get a copy of the warrant from the town administrator?
You mean an updated copy with numbers and everything?
Yeah,
No.
okay.
I made a request.
I didn't know if you on what was in there back.
No, so I made a request several times, and I made another one this afternoon, and what I quite frankly got back was that petition article, PowerPoint presentation I sent you all about plastics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's that's the latest I have. Okay?
okay.
Was it in last night's packet?
Well, I did.
I have what was in last night's packet, but, huh?
I did create a one-liner sheet from what was in the packet, but.
Well, Karen does, okay, we're gonna coordinate here, because Karen kinda did that as well the other day. I thought you were coordinating,
Yeah,
but,
I didn't.
okay,
With
so
her, no.
Karen, are you back?
Microphone's still off.
I mean, I figured tonight we're just gonna talk about titles rather than any article numbers.
Well, I'm gonna talk about a couple of things, so.
I'm back, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about, just so we go through this. We have minutes in the previous meeting, which was March 9th, 2023, that you all have. The only thing I'll mention as a correction, Michelle has identified that she has not completed her training. I don't know if anybody else did either. So we will, in the first major paragraph, strike all finance committee members indicated they completed training. And we just had the reminder that you've got to get your training by April 7th. And, okay, so we got a couple of slackers here. I'm just saying that facetiously, but anyhow. And I would attend a motion to approve those minutes if anyone's so inclined.
Second.
I'll move.
All right, Dana moves.
Mark seconded.
Hang on a second. So Dana moved. Bob, did you second?
Mark did.
Mark did,
Second,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Sorry. So Dana DeCosta moved and Mark Kelleher seconded to approve the minutes of March 9th.
March 9th.
Correct.
Okay, any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The vote, thank you. And I just let me point out that I did include the famous personnel chart on the back, so we go on the record if that's our personnel number, okay?
Yep.
Just so everybody knows, apparently last night at the selectmen's meeting, there was some nice discussion about that. I didn't watch it, but I have heard that there was nice discussion. Okay, so while we have it fresh in our mind, the school budget we just got, okay, we just heard the presentation. I want you to get your heads around it. I'm gonna recommend it to you. We don't have to vote it tonight, but it's one of those things we're gonna deal with. It's a big number. We also have, that I sent to everybody, the tech school presentation. Okay, and that's an equally as good presentation. On that one, you just want to focus in on what the Harwich contribution is 2.2 million something, whatever. And those two, at least the next time we meet, I would like to vote those and get them out of the way unless you folks are comfortable in doing something this evening, which I'm not advocating. I'm just, I'm just laying that out there, okay? Now, moving on from that, go ahead.
Very quick question, process question. Can we vote without the Board of Selectmen having voted on the various warrants?
As long as we have something here that they claim is the warrant, okay, we can actually vote, we can amend our vote later if something changes. And by the way, as far as we're concerned, we should be voting our own independent feelings or, opinions as opposed to what the board does, okay?
Agreed.
So, I mean, if the board wanted to raise it by $50, fine. If the board wanted to reduce it by $50, fine. But we're going to vote with this, I think, what the school committee asked for. Right?
Yep, got it, thank you.
Yep, that's how I feel about it. Okay, so from what I can tell last night, and again, I'm working off what was in the packet from the selectmen's meeting last night. That's the only thing I have. This is kind of a it's not exactly organized the way I thought it was gonna be or would be when we ultimately get done. I'm hoping that some of these things get moved around and someone pays attention to the business order of town meeting, let's put it that way, okay? So we'll just say that, all right? So then the question becomes, well, let's back up. Karen, you put together a tracking system for this, right? And Dana, you have taken a shot at one-liners for this, right?
Yeah,
The two of you
I
need
mean, that's
to,
something myself every year anyway, so I just did it.
okay, but you two need to compare notes and come up with one common system, okay? Can you guys work together to do that?
What do you, can you explain to me what you mean by one-liner?
I'll do better than that, I'll just send it to you and then you'll have it to look at it. I put together one spreadsheet that has 3 tabs at the bottom. One is the budget, one is the warrant, and one is the capital plan. So they're all together that I can switch back and forth when I need to look at them. So you'll see it, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I just use the tool myself, and later there's places to put the votes in, you know, what the committee votes.
Well, that's the whole idea is on the warrant in particular, to track our votes. And the most important thing I think this year is not necessarily our votes, but our comment.
Yep.
And what did we call that last year, Dana?
Well, we have to put in an explanation.
Explanation, is that the official term, explanation? Huh?
No, it's
Justification?
It's our recommendation in writing as to why we support the article.
Yeah,
Or not.
or
right,
not.
oh yeah, whatever it is, right?
Right,
Yeah, I mean, I think this year, that's gonna be the most important thing we do, because there's there's some twists in here that needs some explaining. Okay?
So, yeah, I just have FinCon comments. I added that, Peter, after I sent it to you, after you sent me your
Okay.
comments back.
Okay. All right, well, just so you guys don't duplicate stuff, compare notes to each other, okay?
right, yeah.
Okay, so we can either take this the way it is, which I don't think is the way it's going to be, and we'll have to end up moving everything, you know, around and renumbering stuff, I don't know. But I think as long as we capture the titles at the moment, which I know Karen has, and Dana, you probably have done as well, then I think we're in a position to talk about each one of these, and I have no problem voting on them when we think it's appropriate when we get to that point. Okay? That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I would just say that all the detail outside of what Dana's gonna share, a one-liner or whatever it is with me, but, all of I have the titles, as Peter mentioned, all of the detail is in the packet from last night. And so people need to read that, and I think maybe last year we weren't all that versed on it, so we have to sort of read it, study it, maybe have a printout next to us, so that we don't have to explain everything in great detail every time we talk about it. But that's my
I
suggestion.
mean, every time we talk about it as a committee.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what we're gonna end up doing pretty quickly is walking through this document and deciding there will be some things, I'm not saying we do it tonight, but there will be some things in here, I'll just facetiously say they're no-brainers, like we're just gonna say, well, of course, you know, that's a customary article, or, you know, everybody's in agreement, or whatever. And then we'll end up coming down with the 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever, where we may not all agree, for whatever reason. And those are the ones I think that we're gonna end up focusing most of our discussion and time on, quite frankly. That's just the way I feel about it. It's like everything, you gotta spend 90% of your time on 10% of the stuff in here. You know, so let me just fill you in a little bit. I did get some feedback today. You know, we had, and I sent you all the information I sent on to the town administrator that our recommendation was to include a personnel article, which they're not doing. My understanding is that in the publication of the warrant, that they are at least considering putting that personnel matrix in there somewhere, somehow, so at least is the visibility of what they're asking people to fund, okay? So, if that's the case, and we're assured of that case, then we have a discussion and a decision to make. Is that adequate for us? Or do we want to go ahead with and it's only been my plan at the moment, and Dana, I guess I share it with you, maybe I share it with everybody, I don't know, of actually making a positive motion on the budget that actually says, okay, we're taking all these things out and let the selectmen put them back in. So the question is visibility in my mind. And of course, there's always the question, do we all support the positions? That's another question. But there is a philosophical or strategic question to be asked. How do we want to handle that? We don't need to answer that tonight either, but it's something we're going to have to wrestle with in the days to come. Okay. I did invite for a Saturday session. I tried to get the CPC folks to come in, and neither the chair nor the vice chair are available. I asked them if they could come in tonight at 7 o'clock, and I got no response from them. So I don't have any date yet for CPC. There's a lot of CPC articles. Now, the one thing I will say about CPC, that money is a separate 3%, if I remember right, surcharge on your taxes. That funding is assured and sitting there, and it's a question of the deliberations on how it was going to be spent. And I think for the most part, and maybe for the total of it, that the committee went through, hopefully, CBC committee, and did their stuff, and came up with the path forward that they want to pursue. But I would still like to hear from them and get their recommendation, okay? So, we can do a couple things. We talked last week about potentially having a meeting this coming Saturday. Actually, I threw out there Friday night or Saturday, and I think I got back some responses, but not all. I know, Michelle, you can only do Friday night. Dana, you can do Saturday. Karen, you can do Saturday. I can do Saturday. Mark Kelleher has got to go jump in the ocean at 11 o'clock.
This will take precedence. I'll don't worry about me.
So if he goes and jumps, that only take 5 minutes. So he's going to jump in and run out, and he'll be right back, right? The rest of you gentlemen available Saturday morning?
Yes, I believe so.
Mark?
I have to look.
You have to look, okay. So we can get a quorum on Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, and work for a few hours if that's what you'd like to do. And if that's the case, I'll get the small conference room at Town Hall reserved, because we can't have this room on Saturday. And Dana, then you'd have to post it or get it posted with Judy. Is that something we're interested in doing at this stage, or do you want to wait until we actually get a warrant? And by the way, I might have a warrant in the next day or two.
I think we need a clean warrant, but I'm assuming we're gonna get it by then too, so.
I'm
I
sorry,
think
go ahead, Karen.
We worked off an unclean warrant a couple of times last year, and things kept changing. It was really a pain.
Well,
Peter, can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
Well, I'm hoping that we're actually gonna vote some tonight, but, we could actually set, only because in order to get it posted 48 hours in advance and everything, getting credentials and all that is gonna be quick, have to be quick. I'm hoping we could do that, but if not, we could just make it a work session and track everything, and then say that we'll reaffirm any votes that we take at our next meeting, and just do it that way.
So you saying we just meet? Well, you got to get credentials, or you're not going to be able to tie in remotely.
Well, yeah, I can do it through the phone, but yes, I'm gonna try and get credentials and everything, but to get those, I'm gonna get something up tonight. That they'll have to be able to post tomorrow morning. But then if they can't add the credentials right away, the credentials might come later.
Yeah, so it's gotta it's gotta be posted by the end of the day tomorrow.
Yeah,
I mean, unless somebody's gonna come in at 8 o'clock on, on Thursday morning, right? 48 hours, right?
right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's either that, or we start looking at calendars, and we probably need to do this anyhow for next week and say, okay, who's available Tuesday, who's available Thursday, kind of thing. I mean, what's your druthers? I'm open to anything.
Well, in my situation, I'm retired, I can meet anytime, but,
Yeah, good, Mark.
I just remember last year that we had a lot of nights we had to meet. We can get a lot of this out of the way now. I think we're ahead of the game if at all possible.
So you amenable to meeting Saturday?
Of course, yes.
Okay, all right, so let's plan on Saturday at 9 o'clock, okay?
all right,
Now, if Mark can't show up, is somebody now to turn on the magic machine?
The button says start.
Can we call you?
Yeah.
All right,
I
so,
think there's actually directions underneath it,
There's a cheat sheet.
there's a cheat sheet, yeah.
okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So, Danny, you post for Saturday, 9 AM for the small meeting room in Town Hall. Anybody gonna be at Town Hall tomorrow morning by chance? Nobody, okay, so I'll go sign up for it, okay? I'll get that done, and then we'll go from there, all right? And, the agenda should just be review and, discussion and possible votes on, budget and warrant articles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Good. And Michelle, we'll just have to catch up when we can catch up with you. Okay?
Yeah, because I can always just watch the recording.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Right.
It will be
Okay.
recorded, right?
Yep, yep. All right, Danny.
So I can always catch up, yep.
All right, Danny, did you have something you wanted to discuss this evening?
Do you wanna vote a few tonight?
Yeah, throw them out there. Throw them out there.
Well, first of all, we have the first three articles, which are customary, is to choose the town officers and committees, that's number one. Report of town officers and committees, that's number two, that's where you get to speak. And then the elected officials' salaries, that one's, the money for that is in the budget, but they're listed out, they have to be approved by town meeting, that's a customary article. It is up, a few $1,000 from last year, and that's for the town clerk's salary. It's a total of $119,107, but again, this is a no-charge article. So I would move to accept and adopt all three of those articles.
All right, so let's, hang on a second, Dana, because I'm taking notes because sometimes Judith can't hear who said what. All right, so Dana moved article on town officers and committees, reports of town officers and committees, and elected officials' salaries. The first three items on that list. He moved they be accept and adopt.
I second.
Okay, and so, excuse me again, I'm just writing
Mark A.
Mark A, yeah. So Mark Amarez seconded. We had discussion on those. Here, again, the motion is accept and adopt. All those in favor, I'm gonna do a roll call count. So let's do the folks in TV land. Dana?
Aye.
Karen? Karen?
I'm
Run
sorry, in spreadsheet, aye.
Okay, Michelle?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark A?
Aye.
Mark K?
Okay, aye.
Aye.
Bob? And Peter. So it's unanimous. Makes it easy, right? And by the way, please note for TV land that Angelo is not with us here tonight, so.
Yeah, so it's an 8-0 to.
Correct.
Right.
0.
All right, what do you got?
There's an article, it's to fund the Cape Cod Community Center Media Center. It comes from PEG Access Funds, which is a part of your cable bill. It's $157,037.
It's on page 3, by the way.
Yeah, it supports the channel that we're all on tonight, and this room that you're in. So I would move to accept and adopt that article.
Is there a second?
Is that the media center?
Yeah.
I second.
Okay, Dana moved it, and Mark A. seconded, accept and adopt.
For $157,000, $157,037.
Right. From the cable fund, right?
Access Fund.
Yeah, cable access fund.
PEG.
Peg.
All right. Any discussion on that? All right, we'll put that to a vote. Dana?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark A?
Aye.
Mark K?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Chairman, aye. So again, 8-0. What else you got?
The article to fund the land bank debt service is coming from CPC funds. It's $166,650.
Wait.
What page are you on?
How about going to the one from the cable fund right below the one we just voted?
What's that?
On page 3, it says
47,222.
items funded from the cable fund.
47,222.
You see it?
Okay. Somehow I'm missing that one, but go ahead.
It's just below the media center one.
All right.
And what's that for, just briefly? How's that different than the one above it?
That's channel 18.
Yeah.
Well, it says to fund Channel 22 at Monomoy Regional High School, so.
Yeah.
I don't, just to show you, I ended up with a blank sheet underneath that page, so I don't have anything under that one.
All right, so it says, here's the title, items funded from the cable fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds or borrow a sufficient sum of money to fund the items in the table below, included in the FY 2024 capital outlay plan, and to act fully thereon. By request of the Board of Selectmen, estimated cost $47,222. It's 3 items: equip meeting rooms and field equipment, $43,88. Fund Channel 22 of Monomoy Regional High School for $42,834, for a total of $47,222. So there are 2 items there.
Why is that on our budget and not the school budget?
I mean, the only thing I could think of is the source of funds.
Right.
Maybe they're thinking that we're gonna have to give the money to the schools anyway, so that they could take it out. This just does it directly.
It comes from the cable fund itself, which is not accessible directly by the Monomoy school system. So it has to get funneled from the town over to or the town has to fund that from this fund, because the school doesn't control the cable fund.
Can I answer that question?
Oh,
For
here
you?
she is.
Sure,
This article.
we have a guest.
Jamie Goodwin, Channel 18 Station Manager. This is the 22,
Mhm.
Channel 22. So part of our contract with Comcast is we have to fund public education government.
Right.
The school comes when they need equipment. It's a special request, so it has to be appropriated at town meeting. It comes from the cable fund. The amount on that article may change because we're supposed to split it 50-50 with Chatham. So that amount may not be correct at this moment
For the warrant, or you mean for what eventually happens?
for the warrant.
So
So it's gonna be adjusted?
It may.
All right, let's hold off on it. Let's hold off on this if they're gonna change the number.
Chatham paying half of the 47K?
Yes, that number was appropriated, that number was picked on school enrollment, that's not how we,
Okay.
All right, hey, will you let me know when we get a real number?
I sure will, if they let me know.
Okay, well, all right.
Thank you.
All right, enough of that one. Okay, what was the next one you wanted, Dana?
I had to, fund the land bank debt service. That's, $166,650 coming from CPC funds.
But wait, what page you on?
I don't know what page it's on. It's the second one with all the CPC stuff.
Well, I gotta get to it. CPC tends to be in the back here.
They're not, the pages aren't numbered.
This is on page 13.
Right, so it's the page after 12 of 12.
Ah, okay. Okay, so you want to do the debt service.
Right, that's the last time we'll have to do that, and that finishes off that. As you know, Peter, that debt started back when we were in the Board of Selectmen.
However, that was when the land bank was first started, and then it morphed into CPC. It used to be all the funds went to land bank.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is finishing off our debt, and it goes away this year forever.
All right, so make a motion.
I move that we accept and adopt that article, $166,650 to come from CPC funds.
I second. Mark A.
And the comment there will be, this is the final payment to be made on this debt, right?
Yeah, left over from the land bank.
Final payment. Left over from the original land bank, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which means now that all the money that comes into CPC will go for CPC items instead of paying off this old debt.
Okay, discussion on that? That moved and seconded, by the way, discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Dana?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark A?
Aye.
Mark K?
Hey, aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so again, 8-0. What else you got?
I have 4 more quick ones we can do. One is they're there every year. They're not called customary articles. The selectmen had them on their list. They usually come in by petition. One is to promote the town of Harwich, $30,000. Fund the Mass Cultural Center, $3,600, and defray the expenses of the Chase and Harwich Port libraries, private libraries.
So
$20,000.
promote the town of Harwich is on page 11.
Hey, we gotta catch up on the pages. The chairman's having trouble here, hang on.
Does it say why they increased it to 50,000 this year after being at 30,000 for many years?
Was there an increase? I didn't see an increase.
50.
I thought it
Was
was,
it promote the town?
yeah, the chamber
All right,
one.
in that case, I would hold on that one. I would just do the other 2.
I thought for some reason that was 50 last year, but it had always been 30, but I'm probably
No,
wrong.
Can I look in here?
I looked at last year's warrant, it was still 30.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna make a note, why 50?
Right. Okay, I see it now, but I didn't see it last night.
No problem. What was the next one, Dana?
You had the Mass
The one
Cultural
below,
Council.
Cultural Center.
And
Wait, did you have the supplemental annual allocation of Mass Cultural Council for local cultural council grants? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
For $4,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right after promote the town of Harwich.
Bottom of page 11.
What's the funding source on that, Dana? Do you know? Just curious.
We've used free cash every year, and that's what I would recommend.
But we don't know what, until it's written in the warrant, right? I mean, I'm assuming it is, but I wanna see it in the warrant before I add it.
Unless they have another fund somewhere, that's the one that I would recommend the finance committee take it from.
It's
Okay.
not our choice, though.
What do you mean?
What I mean is, like, we get, historically, we've got, at least when I was doing this last year, we got the warrant, which said where it was coming from based on what the TA said the source was.
And we can always
Not
make,
what we think.
and we can always recommend it not be that source, it be something else. I mean, we are the finance committee.
There's also that list of all the other free cash items, no?
Well, yeah, but there's a ton of free cash left over, so there's a ton of free cash out there, so. My suggestion is we move this and second it, vote it from free cash. If we have to circle back and do something differently, we will.
Okay,
So Dana, did you move that?
Yeah, I moved to, accept and adopt it, $4,000 free cash.
I second.
Okay,
Mark A.
yep. So Dana moved, Mark Amores seconded, accept and adopt from free cash, $4,000 supplemental annual allocation of the Mass Cultural Council for local cultural council grants. Whew. Wow. All right, let's take a vote. Dana,
Aye.
I'm gonna change it up. Michelle,
Aye.
Karen,
aye.
Mark K,
Aye.
Mark A,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Chairman's aye. All right, 8-0. What else you got?
To defray the cost of the Chase and Harwich libraries, $20,000.
Okay, that's on the next page. So
Is that
what,
also free cash assumption?
Yes.
so Dana moved it.
Exactly.
What?
Sorry.
What is it?
Hmm.
We have two libraries, we have two private libraries in town, the Chase Library in West Harwich, a little library, and then we have a little library down in Harwichport on Bank Street, and we have historically authorized money to help defray their expenses. That's been going on for
And if you remember,
eons.
the discussion with the libraries, this money also helps contribute to our meeting the town's need for libraries, so it goes into that formula.
Right,
So
yes.
this money contributes to that, so if we did do that, we'd have to put additional funds into our town library.
So you were accept and adopt from free cash, right?
Yes, $20,000.
And Mark A, you second it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Further discussion? All right, put it to a vote. Michelle,
Aye.
Karen,
Yeah.
Dana,
Aye.
Dan,
Abstain.
abstain, all right, so,
My wife's the president.
okay, it's okay. Mark K,
Aye.
Mark A,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Chairman, aye. So 7-0-1. Okay?
I didn't see any notice in there for the herring fisheries, but I can only assume that that's going to be in there.
Yeah, it's there.
It is.
Is it? Okay. I would move we accept and adopt the herring fisheries item.
I agree.
I just had to find it.
Yeah.
It's on page 12.
It was two after the defray expenses on the library.
Oh, right at the bottom, right at the.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Before
okay.
petitioned articles,
After the revolving funds,
yeah.
there's a chart. 112?
Oh, there it is, okay.
Yeah,
It's hiding.
So Dana, you were accept and adopt?
Yeah, some years we vote against it, but this year I figured we could vote for
Is
it.
there a second?
I second it. Mark A.
I only good at Mark A. Okay. Any discussion? I'm sure we'll have a nice report from someone. Like Mr.
Yeah.
Houston or something like that. All right, we'll put it to a vote. We're gonna do the table first this time. And put the pressure on Bob.
Okay?
Aye.
Mark K.
Aye.
Mark A.
Aye.
Dan.
Yeah, aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 8-0.
Somebody we're gonna have to bring an actual herring to the meeting.
I know it. Especially if it's a long meeting, it will get, all right, got anything else?
Those are the easy ones I had. I could easily vote the tech budget. I'm not sure yet on Monomoy, but, I don't see that going anywhere.
I am very comfortable with the tech budget myself, but I don't know how others feel about it, and we could.
It's not gonna wiggle?
Huh?
The amount's not gonna wiggle?
Do you wanna vote it?
How about fund the 25 grand for tech enhancements at the library, Brooks Free Library?
What's the funding source?
Was that a separate article?
That's, yeah, it's under the standard articles, about 12 down, 14
It's on
down.
page 3.
Thank God you're keeping track.
Really?
Near the bottom, above the cemetery.
Yes,
What's the funding source? Free cash?
no,
Huh?
I don't know.
Yeah, not clear.
It says available funds.
We can wait.
Let's wait till we find out a funding source.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it won't be too much discussion on that one.
Right.
Do you wanna go back to the tech budget? Tech
Yeah.
school budget?
Yeah. Is that the right number? Has everybody looked at the school budget for the tech school? What?
On
I
page,
have
go ahead.
$2,014,200.
And that
Yeah,
number is
that's
on
right.
page 2.
That would be raised and appropriated. So coming from taxes, basically. So I move to accept and adopt the Cape Cod Tech budget 2,014,200 at Howard share, to be raised and appropriated.
I second. Mark A.
Just wait a second, I'm trying to get caught up on the number here. So Dana, you moved 2,014,200?
Yes.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I got it here. I just want to make sure it was the right number that was in the book. So Dana moved, Mark A. second. And it was raise and appropriate, right?
Yep.
Available funds. Right?
Yeah, taxes, yeah.
Okay. Discussion. I'll put it to a vote. Dan?
Aye.
There you go. See, we caught you right there. Mark A?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Mark A?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. Now the pressure's on you guys. Dana?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
All right, 8-0. We have a tech school budget. The reason is we need to educate our children.
We need more people fixing air conditioners
Right, well, that'd be a good one.
and installing solar.
Okay. Nobody wants to dive into Monomoy?
I could vote.
Yeah, like I said, I'm gonna support it.
All right, do you want to make a motion, Karen?
I'm gonna be much more critical next year, but I'm gonna support it this year.
Okay, Karen, you want to make a motion?
I move that we accepted it.
No, I'm asking Karen. I'm asking Karen. Wait a minute. I'm asking Karen to make a motion.
No, it should have, because I don't have all the right words in front of me. I'm trying to update the spreadsheet, so if you wouldn't mind, I'll second it.
All right.
Aye. I move that we, accept and adopt the Monomoy Regional School budget, $28,469,466 to be raised and appropriated.
I second.
All right, say the number again. 4 million.
28 million, $469,466.
Right.
Okay, available funds. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. Mark A.
Aye.
Mark K.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Dana.
Aye.
8-0, okay. Anything else you wanna do?
I mean, I'm not ready to vote on the sewer ones yet. I'm not ready to vote the CPC ones until we have somebody at least talk to us,
Right,
other than and that. I gotta assume that the numbers for the appropriation for accounts for CPC, aren't gonna change, but I'm wondering why there's another 50,000 for administration there, why that one's showing up more often than it used to.
Can I ask a question?
sure.
How do we know how much is in the fund for the CPC?
There was a spreadsheet on that we got at one point.
Okay,
Listed what they have voted on that's still outstanding that hasn't been completed yet. Some of that sometimes comes back, but in general, the CPC is a 3% tax on everything. And historically, they have the biggest buckets of money of all. There are more projects, there are more money than there are projects in general.
okay, thanks. I didn't know if it was picking and choosing.
No, whatever they recommend they can afford to do, they have money for it.
Yeah, it's separate money. Again, it's a 3% church surcharge on your real estate taxes, so it goes into the fund automatically, and then the committee works through and hears requests and whatnot, and then they issue basically this is their report, as to how they think the fund should be dispositioned. So that's how that
Okay,
works.
thank you.
And historically, since CPC began, anytime there's been any attempt by either the selectmen or the finance committee or both trying to say no to something, it's gone through easily. So I don't think we've ever shut down an article. Maybe one over the last 15 years or so.
So the fund, sorry, can I ask this question? The funding source on elected official salaries was what? Raise and appropriate?
It's in the operating budget, so it will be, so that the article that we voted tonight just sets the rate for the salary. There's actually no charge in that article. The funding for that will come from the motion on the next article, which is the operating budget.
Oh, I see.
That motion will have a combination of taxes and local receipts and betterments, all those things that will be listed up.
That's a better way to do it, yep. Thank you.
By the way, I don't even
So
see,
that,
did anybody find in this package the actual capital outlay plan?
no, I didn't.
No.
No, I don't.
I put it down there assuming it's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, the plan's gotta get adopted, right?
Right.
The plan,
So
I didn't
that's
see the
what I
plan
did.
in this packet.
I know that you'd adopt the plan, but I didn't really see the plan in there, so I didn't put it as one that we would do tonight.
So look, the way they have this organized, okay, by jamming all this stuff into one article, basically, right? On the capital outlay stuff.
Yep.
And then trying to jam through a budget. Except for CPC and some bylaw changes, we're not gonna have a lot to discuss. So I'm just thinking out loud here, we better off trying to get a date with the CPC guys for next week and then have our meeting, because otherwise, if we do a Saturday session, we're gonna sit around and all talk about what we've been talking about before, I think. I mean, I don't think we're gonna get to a vote on anything, are we?
Well, if the capital outlay free cash funding, if that 5 million, whatever it was, 5,486 is gonna be one article,
Yeah,
I mean, we already talked about the idea of taking out the things that were under $50,000. But if they're not gonna put those in a separate article, if they're gonna do it all as one, then I think it's up to us as a finance committee to, make a motion on what we support within that. Like, for example, there was 1.9 million for the, 204 Sisson Road. If we are really serious about wanting to move the auditorium part to next year, then we would make the motion to accept and adopt with the following change. And that change would be to reduce that amount by the amount that's gonna go into next year.
yeah, or if we made the condition that, or the exception that, however that gets done, let's say it gets done next year, the auditorium stuff, and I just threw out this before, we haven't discussed it, but, a minimum of 20% of the revenue generated by that specific program would go back towards paying back the taxpayers for that investment. And those words are in their plan, except for they call it return on investment, without identifying where the return comes from, other than saying you're gonna get revenue. So in that case, we could be specific on that,
Right, but, yeah, I would think that the way the capital plan reads in the charter, if you vote something down this year, it goes right into next year's. If it doesn't get funding this year, it goes right into next year's plan in year number 1. So that part would happen automatically. It's just our motion would be short the amount, and then the selectmen would have to move to put it back.
Yeah, no, the only I'm saying is if you adopted the plan as is, with doing all those renovations for that building for the coming year, my suggestion would be you put in the proviso that for that particular improvement, the investment in the auditorium, that a full or a minimum of 20% of the revenue generated by that specific program goes towards paying back the taxpayers for that investment, period.
Yeah, that could be put in there as part of a motion.
Of course it could. I mean, even if we push it the next year, I'd be saying that's what you should do. I mean, that's the more important thing to me than the timing of it, quite frankly. Because it is an investment, and they talked in the plan, or whatever it is, action plan for 204 about return on investment. So I want to get a return on the investment. And by the way, if nobody shows up when they open the auditorium, then what do you do?
If they move to amend the motion by putting it back into this year, if we choose not to put it in this year, and those are all just ifs. But if we choose not to put it in this year, and they choose to amend the motion to put it in this year, we could amend the amendment with tack on that 20%.
I know, but I think the 20% should be there anyhow. I mean, that's just my feeling, no matter when it comes up. So, and quite frankly, I think that the discussion is, one of the problems is there's so much free cash right now, it's like, they gave everybody a big bonus and said, go spend it, right? So you go spend it, and the temptation is to spend it this year, and who knows what next year will be.
Yeah.
But Danny, your point on the less than $50,000 stuff is well taken. I think we'll have to see what this looks like as we get further down the road.
Yeah, that's why, and that's a big chunk of what we have, other than the sewer items, that's a big chunk of what we'd have left to vote,
Right. So, I mean, it could go quick. So I think my druthers are, just hear me out. Not to meet Saturday, let me find out when the guys from CBC can get together with us next week. And let's just yak about what you know, this Tuesday or Wednesday work next week, or give me a couple days or nights that work next week. Because I think on Saturday, we'll just be coming in and doing the same yak we're doing now.
I think in this case, if CPC's willing to be there, we'll show up in enough numbers to have a quorum.
Yeah, I just don't know what day it is, that's all.
Right.
So,
As soon as you know it, send me a text and I'll get it posted.
yeah, okay, Dan?
I just want to clarify something with CPC applications.
Yeah.
My recollection is that if the CPC has approved an application, then that must go to town meeting. It can't be
That is correct.
deleted by the board of selectmen or for that matter.
No, it has to be in the warrant.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, somebody may not decide to support it, but.
It doesn't be supported, but it has to be in there.
Yeah.
My feeling on those, quite frankly, they work through the process, the money is there, and who am I to say that's not what they should spend it on? I don't know, you know?
Well, you can pretty much assure yourselves that, first of all, the project qualifies.
Right.
For CPC funding, because that's part of the whole vetting process.
We hope so.
Peter?
Yeah.
There was one article in there I saw to vote to rescind Article 11 of 2000. And I didn't know if you had any other notes or information on that one.
No, I saw it, I saw it, but doesn't it say something about pending some kind of legal input or something?
Yes, it's on page 11 near the top.
Right, but.
Placeholder pending board discussion and legal input.
Yeah, so we can't do anything, we don't know what they're rescinding.
I couldn't find it.
It's right here.
No, find the Article 11 from
Oh, of 2000?
2000, yeah.
I don't know.
I have it at home, but I didn't bring it with me here. I didn't bring my 50 town books.
You want to break into your house and get it?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
You know where the key is.
So I don't want to belabor this. So we all agree we won't meet Saturday. I will find out when we get a session with the CPC people, and we'll just schedule it, and whoever can show up, as long as we get a quorum, will be good.
Yeah, but even if we didn't get a quorum, we could hear everything and ask the questions, and then the next meeting be ready to vote.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fair. I just want to get the chance to get them in front of us, whoever us is, so that we can hear it, just like we did with the schools, and say, okay, we heard their presentation, we made a decision. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go from there. Any other business to bring before this body? Yep, Bob?
Well, I'm hoping when we talked earlier about getting a better draft of the warrant, and what I certainly hope, and I think we need with that, is a final current Appendix B, full Appendix B. Because amongst other things, the portion that was in the packet last night was not complete, so it did not have totals.
Right, yep.
And so you couldn't really, if we're
Right.
voting on expenses versus revenue.
You couldn't compare one to one.
You
and say,
couldn't look
where am
at
I?
the entire list of
Yep,
expenses.
Yep, no, I agree. I agree.
The other thing that was different about that, what was presented in the 6 pages that was in there, is it had finance committee numbers that were, first of all, voted, and different from what was in the budget. And I think he did that to show what we're talking about on the positions, but if anything, that makes our position with a lower budget not several $100,000 higher than what.
I think it's an error. I think it's an error. I didn't waste any time on it, quite frankly. I saw it, and it's like leftover from last year or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get it straightened out. Okay, if I get a warrant sometime in the next couple of days, or whenever I get it, I will pass it on to you. When I get the school board presentation, I will pass it on to you. When I get the write-up on not the justification, but the the rationale for the early childhood program, I'll pass that on to you. So whatever I get from either the school district or the town, I'll be passing it on to you, and we'll just go from there, okay?
Yep.
All right, fabulous. Anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's non-debatable, so.
All right.
Aye.